Facebook land. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's so good to see you. We have had a time. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for watching the replay. We just thank you for being here. Katie Andraski and I. All right. So let me tell you what's going on today. I've got a special guest. She's an author, a poet, a teacher, a former publicist, and an equestrian, and a few other titles as well. Her name is Katie Andraski, and she's joining me today for Marketers on a Mission, episode number 97. Even former publicists can find marketing a challenge. My interview with Katie Andraski. Hi, I'm Patricia Durgan, the Christian Message Coach, and this is Marketers on a Mission, the live show offers tutorials and interviews to help Christian writers and speakers take their message online. Hello, Katie.
Hi there.
This is going to be a great show because we had to work really, really hard for it.
Yeah, we sure did.
We needed the Lord's direct intervention, and He was kind enough to give us that. Let me check and make sure everything's good over here. And I will get us started. There we are. Yes, we are. So let's talk about your books first, then your very interesting hobbies, which I would like to have myself. And then we'll discuss your personal publishing journey, which wasn't what you expected it to be. Is that okay? Is that sequence okay?
It sounds good.
All right. All right. So God called you to write when you were in a barn and sitting with your border collie. Tell me about that, please.
Yes. I was reading C.S. Lewis, and I was reading his works completely, like just about every work for a project in school. And I had just finished the Chronicles of Narnia, and that fall I had discovered The Weight of Glory, which kind of informs how I try to live, which basically he says there are no mere mortals, that how you treat people can either help them towards something so beautiful you would be tempted to worship them, or something so horrible that it would be like a horror movie. That's basically what he said, and that what we do and how we treat each other matters. And that was a passage that changed my life. And then I started reading his other work because I had an end of the year project paper I had to write. And I was out in the big barn, and it was freezing rain that day. And I just really longed to do what C.S. Lewis did for me, for others, is I wanted to offer a vision of glory. And I just wanted to show people basically that. So anyways, that's what drove me. And those tears kind of are what drove me. I just ached to do that. And then from then on, it just seemed like God opened doors. I had a very good English teacher, and then I went to Wheaton College, and they brought in a poet who was able to help us with poetry. And my second part of the call came when I was a freshman at Wheaton. And that spring semester, Madeline Lingle was there, and there were just classes that kind of all went together. And I thought, I was called to be a poet. And it's funny, I went back east to visit my my family and stuff, and a friend of mine, I ran into her at a grocery store, and she says, "Oh yeah, we knew that. We knew you were going to be a poet." So that's a cool thing. And and then my teacher, I said, "Well, I'm going to call to be a poet," and my teacher said, "Well, it's like the loaves and two fishes that you have to." That it was kind of a humble gift. He wasn't real impressed with me, but it was a humble gift, and that I could use it. And Madeline Lingle played a role in my life. I even have a comment of hers on the back of my poetry book. And so she played kind of a big role, throughout my career through publicity and stuff. So anyways, and she was very, very kind when I said, "Oh, I'm called to be a poet." So
I think it would be really cool to meet her and even to have engagement with her. She just was so talented herself. I'm impressed that the Lord gifted you with that connection.
Yes, her book, I went through a really dark time when I was a publicist, and her book, The Irrational Season, I was reading it, and she had a chapter called The Noahs of God. And it talked about being an atheist for God, and how people who are into ideology can really break you, and they're more interested in helping people at a distance instead of helping people close in. That's how I remember it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of saved me. I was really at a rock bottom in my faith, and those words saved me. And I wrote her like a 9-page letter, and she wrote back to me and was very kind and said I should write the contents of the letter, which I guess essentially became the novel, The River Caught Sunlight.
Mm-hmm. So before we get to your books, I want to mention one thing, zip it in here, and that is that you're tremendously creative, aren't you? You're a poet, yes. You're a writer, but you have other gifts as well. You're an equestrian. You are a fantastic photographer with a great eye. I'm a big fan of your photography, Katie, from the very first time I ever saw it till today and forever.
You sure are, and I don't know what to do with that, because I'm maybe I should print things out and try to sell them at local stores, because I only use my iPhone because it's with me. I've thought of getting a fancy camera, but the iPhone is with me, and so when I see something, it's like cherry picking. I just look at things that are interesting and take pictures. All it is.
But they reveal your heart. The things that you choose, they're very introspective. They always get my attention. And whatever it is that I'm doing, for the moments that I'm gazing and embracing your photography, I just feel my spirit just calm, just the peace filled. It's just your photos are stunning. You're very gifted in that.
That's really amazing to me. I didn't know they did that. I just want to give people, that's kind of what I want to give to people, is that calm and a quiet place in the midst of all the turmoil that shows up on Facebook. And my grandfather was a photographer. I've got his original negatives of stuff that he took. And my mother was a pretty talented photographer too. So I come by it pretty honestly, I guess. But the iPhone is just a nice little gizmo to have, and maybe someday I'll invest in something fancy, but like I say, the phone is with me, so that's
yes. And nowadays, I mean, used to in days gone by, you needed a fancy camera, but you don't now.
Right.
iPhone is a very good product. Very good product. Takes great pictures.
Yes.
Okay. Well, anybody who's watching live or during the replay, go to Katie's Facebook page and profile, and I'm going to list those, all her resources, her website, and so forth. After the show, they will be up above the video, but you've got to go look at this photography, because it's going to take your breath away. So now you've written 3 books. Are they all poetry related, Katie?
No, and actually I've got a bunch of manuscripts that are just sitting in notebooks, so it's more than 3. But they're in various stages of work. But my collection of poetry was basically my MFA thesis, and it's called When the Plow Cuts. And I would like to re-release it, and just kind of put it back out there. And then my novel is The River Caught Sunlight. And I've got 2 prequels and 2 sequels to it in various stages of draft forms. They're drafts, they're not fancy. And then I just wrote, last summer I did Tupelo Press's 30 by 30, where you write 30 poems in 30 days and try to help them raise money. And so I ended up writing a collection of poetry about my horse, both horses, called Spiritual War Horse, and how they helped me make certain kinds of peace and deal with things. So it kind of opens with, we had a shooting at NIU, and the crying hadn't stopped. So that's why I got my horse. It was to help with that. So, and that book, it's at 2 contests. And if nothing comes of that, I'm probably going to self-publish that also. I've got a cover that's stunning for it. She made a cover for When the Plow Cuts, and this was like her second choice, and I thought this will go wonderfully with the book. So
perfect.
Anyways,
so you're still very active in writing still, as a normal part of your life.
Well, yeah, mostly my blog. My blog takes up most of my time, my writing time, and I'd like to collect those blogs, see what I have with the blogs. I also do WNIJ. I do these little perspectives. They're like 90-second clips for our local NPR station. And I would encourage people to approach their local NPR station and see about doing something similar, because they're hungry for content. Like our station calls for people to, from the region to write a perspective, and they'll publish it. So they're really open. But it's like a 250-word piece that I read on the radio about every 5 weeks. So
that's cool.
It's very, very cool. It's very cool. I've got about, I don't know, however many listeners, that's what I've got. So that's kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. And they're very, very supportive. I know some people can be defensive about NPR, but this particular group are very, very, very supportive, and they're really cool. I feel very safe with them.
That's a wonderful opportunity for everybody, isn't it? Including the listeners.
Yes, it is. Definitely. Good. Definitely. Good.
Well, now I saw that you wrote that you began writing poetry because it allowed you to write in code. What did you mean by that code?
Well, I came from a silencing family, and so with poetry, you can boil things down with images. And also, I was lazy, and we didn't have computers. So I didn't have to type and retype like a story. And once we got computers, it was much easier to write prose and to write a novel. And I moved from poetry to prose because I fell in love with the sentence. And I love the music of the sentence. I read Annie Dillard's Pilgrim and Tinker Creek way back when I was a young woman, and her Teaching a Stone to Talk, and her language. And I love the music of the sentence. I read Annie Dillard. I repeated there.
Yes.
That's weird.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
So anyways, that's what I did. And so then I started writing the novel because I needed to work out my, just kind of what happened during those years. It's just, it wouldn't let me go. I moved on to another novel, and a friend of mine read it, and it pulled me back in to try to revise it and work with it. And I ended up splitting it into two, so that there's this novel, which I really didn't want to deal with that material, but I ended up having to. And then there's a second half of kind of what happens when the character moves out to the country. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then there's the third one, which I wrote while I was marketing the first one.
How do you keep all that straight?
I don't. That's why I'm overwhelmed. That's why I think I want to go on Ritalin.
You referenced just a moment ago that you come from a silencing family. Can you give us a very short description of what that means and how you were able to move beyond that in your writing?
My mother used to say, "You talk too much." And I would talk to her about conversations, and she said, "People aren't interested in what you have to say." And after my parents died, a friend of my aunt said, "There are things that you never tell anyone but God." And so it was pretty strong. And then, our family tried to be the great evangelical family in the church. So we had to look better than we were. And that was kind of a devastating and a hard thing. And I was the one that was always honest and said, "No, this is who I am. This is," I was honest about who I was. And so that would kind of drive them nuts. But they really, I felt this kind of internal, don't tell your story. I was very afraid of my audience. And then I went to graduate school, and that made it worse because I went through workshops, like 5 of them, and they really hammered at me, and it was very, very painful. And so showing my work to people became a painful thing. Then I discovered, I kind of moved along and wrote, and I spent a lot of time writing by myself, like just writing without showing my work. Because workshops, I was in a workshop that was on the North Shore of Chicago, and I would drive in an hour and 15 minutes every Monday night to work with these ladies who are very accomplished writers. And I eventually quit because I realized I had to be alone with my material and write from the beginning to end and listen to it. And that was one of the biggest insights that I have and can offer, is you need to be alone with your material and listen to it. And when you get it end to end, then show it to people, because their comments, they're going to insert their imagination into your imagination. And it's a still small, quiet voice that leads. And our intelligence it's very smart. You can trust how your brain will organize things, and you can trust the fact that you start with a really bad rough draft, you can make it better, and you can pull on the logical side of yourself. But it's really amazing how your subconscious and your writer's muse can produce things that make sense and that hang together without you consciously trying to make that happen. And then I found Facebook, and Facebook is really what taught me to have an audience, because I would write these little short poems, and that's a whole nother book that I could offer, but I would write these little short statuses. And so a poet at our university invited me to write about my Facebook process in a magazine she offered, and it took a year for me to do that. But L.L. Barkat found me of Tweet Speak Poetry. Different people just kind of found me. But I would write just the little poems. And now, because Facebook is a visual thing, that I replace the poems with pictures, because people, and I've become less verbal anyways. There's a lot of blanks in my mind. And so that's why I kind of do the pictures. I've always been an image person, and stuff like that. But anyways, Facebook really taught me how to have an audience, how not to be afraid of my audience. And then, publishing the book, one of the things that, I was really good as a publicist, but when my book came out, I froze and I was scared to death, and I just locked up and got overwhelmed and didn't do tasks that I knew I should do. Well,
let's talk about that for just a second, because when you were a publicist, you were dealing with the cream of the crop across the country: Newsweek, New York Times, Publishers Weekly, Moody, Christianity Today. These are big time publishers, and you were dealing with them daily or weekly on behalf of your clients.
Yep.
Which wasn't hard. You succeeded at that. But then when you had your own book, it was a little bit different experience.
Yep. Well, because the industry, everything changed also. When I was doing it, it was like 30 years ago, and I was a pioneer because I took some Christian books, from Crossway, and I went to New York because somebody told me, go to New York, visit them. My company took a risk on me. Publishers Weekly published, some of the books. They were all very, very interested in me. I got to see Stephen Kampfer of Time, and he only saw his assistant saw most publicists, but they were very interested in what Crossway was doing with this, the beginnings of the culture wars and stuff like that. And so, and I was very much myself, but the fact that I had the Wheaton College education and the poetry background gave me an into these journalists, and I had a really good mind for setting up, this would be a good story. And so, and I just kind of wore my plain clothes and talked to people, and I don't know, it just somehow it worked, and for some reason I was good at it. But with my own book, it's just really hard, and it was hard to take rejection, and when people said no, and then, like I said in my letter, you kind of get this negativity that goes out into the ether, and so that's not good. And I was kind of blah about publishing the book, because by then I'd come very, very close. Like St. Martin's looked at the book twice. I've got 2 personal rejections from a major editor at St. Martin's, no agent, but she ultimately said no. There was an agent who was very interested in me. She suggested I hire an editor, which was one of the best things I could have done. And this editor just healed a lot of the wounds that happened at Arkansas. And so this agent followed me for 7 years, and ultimately it was no. And so that coming very, very close, but no, kind of broke me. And when the book finally had an opportunity to be published, I was just kind of blah about it. It was like the whole, Oprah has said, let your dream go. Well, it went. I mean, I'm just very, very, and I'm really glad actually during those years that it didn't get published, because I would have looked at publishing as my salvation instead of looking to the Lord as my salvation. It would have depended on, I deserve to have this published. Well, it didn't. And yet God opened up other things that were really good and really important just in my life. And it might have broken me to be published during those years, but God did other things that were good. And you have to trust in him, and I sometimes think dreams can break you. And and right now I'm not sure I want to be a best-selling author, which is, I'm kind of happy with my little audience of 200 and 30% open rate on my blog. And I mean, I'd like to make money or at least break even, but it's just the way.
But you're still staying active. You're still serving. You're still getting the word out. People can find you. All the things. It's a smaller scale, but you can ramp that up anytime you and the Lord want to.
That's exactly right. And it's kind of up to the Lord, because I've seen him, like L.B. Johnson, the doors just swung open for her with her book of Barclay and her other books. I mean, they just, and Kirkus Reviews gave her a really good, it was like a lead story or something on her book, and the doors just swung open. And I think that God can open those doors and he can not open those doors. And it's just, but I think I have a piece somewhere on my blog that talks about I was my younger self's worst nightmare. And it was one of those perspectives for NIJ where I basically say, it's important to be faithful, and it's important to do the work and to show up at the page. And I plug away. It's not fancy. My blogs aren't fancy, but I just kind of keep at it. And I need to, get back to my fiction. I need to get back to some of these longer pieces. But, and that's been a matter of lack of focus and getting absorbed in Facebook and wasting time, like we all.
There's the honesty.
Yes, I waste time, and I just, and I can't take my eyes off the political situation in the country, and it's fascinating to me.
What you're saying is so indicative of the bulk of writers' experiences. Very few are meteors.
Yes.
And a small percentage go to a conference or give it a shot. It doesn't work out immediately and stunningly, and so they waste away. But the bulk of writers have this ebb and flow. There's rejection, acceptance. There's you're strong and absolutely focused and completely sure of your calling. And then there's the next day or the next week or month or season where you just are sort of questioning, is this did I even hear God right 35 years ago?
Yeah.
This is the normal. So we don't need to, nobody wants it to be that way. We always want to be the meteor. But it's good to face reality so that we can continue to maintain our calling and do whatever it is, as you say. Keep doing what he's called you to do in a smaller format maybe, or a less public format. Give him the opportunity to work within that framework. And he's given you a very loyal audience.
Yes. And it's been a good life. I'm not Joe best-selling author, and yet I have several friends that are kind of big deal authors. And it opened up the door for me to be a university teacher and to work with basically with minorities and inner city kids, and I did that for 20 years, and it was deeply, deeply rewarding work. And it took my work, the Knox I took at MFA school, and the Knox learning how to write and learning, I'd go to these different workshops that were wonderful, and all of that stuff, I was able to use that as a teacher and offer that back to the world and offer it back to my students. And so, it was really, really rewarding work. And so it's been a good life. It's a rich life. It's not, I say it's not bestseller dumb, but you don't always have to be Mrs. Bestseller to have rich artistic and writing life.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And you have the other elements too. You've got your beautiful horses that you love and they love you. You've got your farm. You've always had that agricultural tie, haven't you? Grew up on a farm. You're on a farm now.
Yes, we lived in the suburbs for about 20 years though, and a little in town, but I was kind of always looking out, at the farming situation, and then it just kind of worked out for us to have this little farm. I don't know how long we'll be able to stay here because we're older and you get tired, but right now this is what we have. So yes, the agricultural world, I've always really deeply admired it. I had a farmer that I had a crush on, and that's what a lot of the poems in the first book are about. And actually that same farmer shows up in the novel. Just a crush, it's like, what does it mean for a woman to have a muse? And that's kind of what I did. And it was like I say, just a schoolgirl crush. But I wrote an awful lot of stuff out of that energy. So it's kind of cool.
Your life is filled with peaceful environments that you have chosen and God has gifted you with you and your husband together. The hobbies that you have draw toward introspection and the giving God space to work in our brain and our spirit. And then your writing does that too. I hope that you know how much we appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you.
If you had written $4 million worth of best-selling books, you would be inundated with all kinds of requests that you wouldn't be the same Katie that you are today. So filled with peace and drawing us away. Come away.
Right.
Rest in God.
Yes. That's kind of been the message that I've been getting is to rest. I really, really, really these days really want to read. I've got a whole ton of books I've bought that I want to read, a variety of subjects, but I just really want to read and take things in.
Let me see if we have any comments or questions, Katie.
Okay.
Melinda Inman is here. She's joined us. She's here.
Hi, Melinda.
Oh, she's giving you compliment after compliment. You need to make sure and check out my profile when we get finished with this episode. She's got several wonderful things to say about you. Let's see what else we've got, if anything. There we go. All right. So I'm going to post, as I mentioned earlier, your links to your website and so forth, and your Amazon page and your Facebook profile and page, and that will go above it. But we had some crazy connection problems, but we had a great conversation, didn't we?
Yes, we sure did.
So we asked the Lord to help us, and He did.
Yeah.
My blood pressure, which is not normally high, was a little bit on the tense side there for a few minutes, about a half an hour. But just talking to you and talking about your gifts and your peace-filled life just brought me right back down. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I think, to be honest, writing and rewriting that novel helped me and with this particular editor, helped me make a deep piece that you couldn't buy with therapy. I mean, it was just kind of amazing. And it wasn't just the writing of it. It was the rewriting and the rewriting and the rewriting that brought real deep healing for me. Now, if you read the book, you wouldn't think you wouldn't think that, but it helped me realize how much I was loved by my parents and how much I was loved, and I just made a deep piece. So I think writing definitely is a healing art. And an important art because of that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today and sticking with me while we were wrestling with technology.
That's crazy.
It's been a joy. It's been a real joy, Katie.
Oh, good.
So, viewers, this has been A Marketer's on Mission, episode number 97. We talked about even former publicists can find marketing a challenge. And my guest was author, poet, equestrian, photographer, Katie Andraski. Tomorrow, best-selling author Janet McHenry will join me and share her perfect marketing plan. It may just turn out to be your perfect marketing plan too. That happens right here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, I'm Patricia Durkin, the Christian Message Coach, and I pray this show helps you reach more people online for Christ. See you tomorrow.